Welcome to the Alembic. Our topic today continues with behaviors of a yogi leader. In the second step, discipline practice, we mentioned self confidence and the ability to understand others better as the outcomes that one expects. So, let's look at the behaviors that one would exhibit at that level of maturity. So, some of the behaviors exhibiting self confidence would be handling fear and anxiety with ease and grace. So, having self confidence doesn't mean that you don't have fear, that you don't suffer from or experience fear. The difference is how one handles anxiety. And someone who has self confidence, which comes from the disciplined practice of yoga principles and tools and techniques, has the ability to handle a situation in which there may be anxiety and fear involved in a graceful way that it looks easy for them. It doesn't mean they are not fearful, it's just that they figured out how to handle that fear so that they don't lose the productivity, that their achievement of their objective is not impeded. Comfort with ambiguity, that's an obvious one. Someone who is self-confident doesn't need to be made certain about everything that's to be expected. They know they can handle situations that are undefined. Being self-driven and not expecting others to open doors is another behavior that one sees from someone who is self-confident. Exhibiting strategic agility and embracing change. Strategic agility implies that when needed, as needed, you are able to change your ideas, your stance on any given situation, on any given concept. And thus you can change your decisions, actions and behavior based on what works best for that situation. And thus you don't run from change, in fact you embrace it, because every change could possibly bring opportunity along with it. And always looking for ways to improve. Self-confident people want to change things because they are confident that whatever works is fine but can be made better, and while it will require change, well, they are always ready for it. The second attribute at step 2 of this maturity model is understanding others better. So, the behaviors that relate to this are exuding empathy without sympathy. This is a very key point. Empathy is the ability to understand another person's pathos, their feelings and emotional state, their stance on something driven by their beliefs. Sympathy is the ability to reproduce that pathos, the mental emotional state that another person is in. And it's very important for anyone, especially person in a leadership situation, to understand and apply the difference. We all have traveled in planes and we know what they say. If the bag drops, you first fix your own oxygen mask before you help your neighbor. Because if you are unable to help the other person, then, well, you're both in trouble. So, in a situation where there is a coachable moment, or you are trying to help someone who is not in a good emotional state, if you empathize with them, you can understand their point of view and you can help move them from where they are, hopefully. But if you sympathize with them, then you fall in the same state and you lose the ability to think clearly yourself, as we discussed earlier. And thus, you actually lose the ability to effectively coach and help another person. So, empathy is important, but sympathy not so much. Being eager for others' ideas. People who understand others better do that through understanding their ideas. When effective leaders ask people for their ideas and thoughts, it's not only for the content of what they are thinking, but also to better understand why and how they arrive at those conclusions, because that gives insight into how that person thinks and what drives their thinking and consequently their behavior. Delegating effectively. A person who understands other people is more effective at delegation because you have confidence in what you are asking whom to do. The insight of each person's capabilities and matching them with what you ask them to do is very useful and makes for effective delegation. Promoting accountability and transparency. Again, when you understand people better, when you have a greater degree of insight into how they work and why they do what they do, you can hold them more accountable because you can present with more clarity in terms that they understand what is expected of them. Thus, you also ask for transparency so that not just one person but a larger team can gain a shared understanding of any given circumstance, situation, or policy or vision. Align a larger team of people working together on any given thing. Setting high expectations for results. Again, knowing what works best for one person, knowing their capabilities and the way somebody performs helps you as a leader to set higher expectations from them because you are using their skills and abilities and thought processes to the best match of what they can do. Moving on to the third step of this leadership maturity model, we see manifested empowerment. And the two aspects of that we discussed were a strong volition and influence. This is where the fun begins. Strong volition. Having clarity of intent and purpose, always knows what they are doing and why, and they can explain that to others in terms that the others can understand. Believing that they can achieve their objective. Volition is defined as the ability or the power to apply one's will. And someone with strong volition knows that they can achieve their objective because they know they can do what they need to do. Not being daunted by circumstances or criticism. Someone at this level knows what they can do, and they have generated a sense of self which is not dependent on others. Hence, a leader exercising strong volition does not give much credence to what others might think, although they will look at any learning they get from feedback and criticism. Being driven by self-generated principles. When you know what you think and why you think what you think, that the conclusions that you have drawn are based on your personal experience and intellect, which is in equilibrium. You are not dependent on what someone might have said, what you believe, what someone might have believed, or what someone says they believe. Hence, you act and behave with a high degree of confidence in your own thought processes because you know that they work, because they have worked for you. So, you've generated those principles yourselves based on your personal experience. No hearsay. And finally, willing to do what it takes. People with strong volition know and expect when things might get tougher, and they're always willing to handle it because they've planned for it. It doesn't happen to them, they make it happen. And then influence. As manifested empowerment unfolds at this step of leadership maturity, you begin demonstrating behaviors of influence. Knowing how to listen effectively, shutting down my internal noise, and being able to focus on another person's input, their thoughts, their feelings, what they are saying, how they are saying it, how they are expressing themselves, and looking for insights and patterns in that information. And you cannot do that if you are distracted yourself. So listening effectively is a higher stage of self-awareness, and it really unfolds a world of influence once you can use it effectively. Because in that data somewhere is the key to your problem. Demonstrating integrity. We talked about this earlier. You are generally able to influence and affect people's thinking and behavior more effectively and more strongly if you are seen as a person of integrity, as someone who is congruent in their living and in their behavior towards others. Extending trust. Trust can become a two-way street over time. So you wield more influence if you can trust others, and you can trust others if you can extend your own trust to them. Promoting growth in others. Influential leaders are always looking at opportunities to grow not just themselves but others, because in the process of growing others, you grow yourself. There is a saying that you give what you wish to receive and you teach what you wish to learn. Influential leaders really understand the value of that maxim. And finally, understanding organizational dynamics. Understanding the structure, the processes, the stakeholders, the points of influence for whatever goal you want to achieve, whatever change you want to bring about, is greatly helpful in shaping your communications and your interactions to translate the same vision, values, or goals and objectives in a language, in a way that your audience can understand, so you can tailor it to the best effect for each individual, diverse, disparate stakeholder group. At the last stage of this leadership maturity model, step 4, we define singularness, and the attributes are sovereignty and fearlessness. So what behaviors do we expect from someone who demonstrates sovereignty? Thinking independently to draw conclusions, not depending on other people to think for you. Sovereign individuals are absolutely confident in their own thinking, and they need to think it for themselves before they accept it as gospel. And they completely trust their own understanding. It doesn't mean they think they know everything, not at all. But it means that whatever they know with confidence. There is no ambiguity about the epistemic state of the content of their understanding. Acting on knowledge rather than belief or hearsay, as we just discussed above. Not seeking validation or approbation from others. It's not that you don't care about others or what they think, but when you are making your decisions, you do not need people to agree with them. You don't have a need for everyone to be happy, and you understand that that will not always be the case. Understanding and relishing the fact that the buck stops here. So sovereign individuals like the fact that they are in charge. And rather than being apprehensive or fearful, they use that to achieve their ends in life in small and big ways. And next, fearlessness, seeking new challenges. Fearless people are always looking for new challenges, and they don't shirk something new, something that they may know nothing about, because they have the confidence based on prior experience that they can get into a situation, figure out what needs to be done, learn whatever they need to do, gain the skills required, and achieve the goals. And if they are unable to do that, to be able to say no. Feeling no apprehension without reason. We all have apprehensions and fears in our lives. But fearless people, when they experience a situation like that, go into the situation, analyze it, and find out why. As long as there is a reason for your fear, it makes sense and it's good. Fear is part of our DNA for a reason. But fearless people manage fear, plan around fear to achieve their objectives. Confronting, rationalizing, and resolving your doubts and fears. So the reason some people become fearless is not because they don't experience fear, but because every time they do, they don't let it overcome their intellect. They draw into their intellectual equilibrium and rationalize the reasons, the causes, and the process which brought them to that state. Once they've rationalized it, they can break it down and determine what's true, what's real, and what's not. And then they can create a plan of action to address and resolve and then move on. They are not irrationally threatened by others. We can be physically, mentally, or emotionally threatened by people. That's a fact of life. But a fearless person does not let that happen irrationally. Again, when you confront a situation like that, you rationalize it and then resolve it. And finally, using failure to learn and grow. So one reason people become more and more fearless is that they use every such opportunity to learn more about themselves and about others, and they grow from that. And that growth brings more fearlessness with it. So we just discussed the leadership maturity model that's presented by the process of yoga, which we introduced earlier. The principles, tools, and techniques that the discipline of yoga provides us give us the means to understand ourselves, to become more productive, to become more influential, and ultimately to become better leaders. They help us develop and inculcate the behaviors that we just discussed. Going forward, we will explore the specific ways in which the discipline of yoga guides us and provides us insight into how we can inculcate and develop those behaviors and to grow our own capability along this yoga based leadership maturity model.